Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
A saying we like to use is every behavior is an attempt to solve a problem. So just because a client is, let's say, eating ice cream and having a glass of wine at night, it's like, oh, it seems like such an easy thing to take away. The reality is that it's serving a purpose for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it's helping to cope with shame, guilt, pain, fear, loss, whatever the thing might be. Humans in particular use food as a coping mechanism. So when you start looking through that lens of what is this solving for someone, and how can I then help them solve it differently or better with a better long-term solution, and utilize food more to like nourish and support the body, you can help people change much more effectively. So over time, I'd say we steered away from intense physiological intervention, though there's a time and a place for that, and we talk about that stuff too. And focused more on how do you help people actually make the changes they're looking to make.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed the Director of Performance and Nutrition at Precision Nutrition, Brian St. Pierre. He leads a team of nearly 20 expert coaches, helping individuals of all backgrounds reach their personal and professional goals. In addition, he has worked with a host of professional athletes and sports teams, including the San Antonio Spurs, Cleveland Browns, U.S. Open Champion Sloane Stephens, and much more. We discussed the psychology of eating, along with Brian's deep health framework, what he learned from working with professional athletes, Precision Nutrition's new sleep, stress, and recovery certification, and his one tip to get your body back to what it once was. Really enjoyed my interview with Brian. He has a ton of great experience. I know you'll love it. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I have Brian St. Pierre on. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian. Looking forward to being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Director of Nutrition and Performance at Precision Nutrition. How many years?
Just finished I'm going on 12, actually. Going on 12 this month, June 1st. So yeah, it's been a long time.
Maybe explain to the audience what Precision Nutrition is. I went through one of their certifications, but to the people that don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we wear a bunch of different hats as a company. I'd say our main one is certifying other health and fitness professionals to do nutrition coaching. That's, by far probably our biggest service. So personal trainers, strength coaches, athletic trainers, and we can even get into the realm of like dietitians, physicians, Group X instructors, anyone that basically does any type of health counseling or training in some way, shape, or form, will often utilize our nutrition coaching certification to build their own nutrition skills and then develop coaching skills on top of that in order to actually help people change behavior. So that's our biggest market. Then we have a bunch of continuing education courses to support that, to learn more and develop your skills. We have a health coaching certification. So if you really want to take it to the next level, we also do sleep, stress, and recovery. And then we historically actually started as a coaching company ourselves, like coaching clients. And that's what got us into the certification business. So hey, we could teach people how to do this. And that became our bigger business. But we still coach clients because it helps inform our certification. Like, hey, what are we learning? What are we seeing? Putting new things into practice that we're learning from the research, testing out new ideas, right? So it just becomes like a cycle where we try things in our own coaching practice, learn from it, and then we put those learnings into our certification. So that's kind of, it's what we do in a nutshell, I'd say.
Yeah, and having a certification like that, like updating it, how many times have you updated your certification?
I think we're on our 4th edition right now. So we try to update it like, it's not an exact science, but probably every 3 to 5 years, as we've gathered some new learnings or something significant has shifted in our own practice or in the research. or we just feel like, okay, we've improved and streamlined thought processes and things. And it's time to update our materials to reflect that. So it's usually about every 3 to 5 years.
And what would you say some of the high level things that have changed over the years? I know it could be a few things, but within nutrition and performance and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the biggest thing is, there are a couple of things. Like historically, and many years ago when I started at PN, we were very focused on nutritional physiology, right? Like we had anytime meals and post-workout meals. So that was like the structure. Anytime meals were lower in carbs, higher in like protein, veggies, and fats. And then post-workout meals were much higher in carbs. Right, we had all this like nutrient timing stuff mixed in there. And over time, we just found, while that works, it's just more complex for people to follow. And the more we were able to simplify things for most people, the more consistent they could be and the better results they actually got. People who were able to follow that post-workout anytime approach did great, but there was a higher rate of attrition. Like people had a harder time following it. And so we became more nutrition agnostic. We found that there were lots of different ways to help people get good results, whether that's eating Mediterranean, keto, vegan, you name it, we can help you do it better. In addition to that, we found what helped more than anything was behavior change practices, right? How do you can know all the nutrition information in the world. You can have a PhD in nutrition and be terrible at nutrition coaching because you don't know how to communicate to humans in a way that's going to facilitate them changing their behavior, because behavior change is hard. It fundamentally truly is, because there are lots of reasons why we do the things we do, right? A saying we like to use is every behavior is an attempt to solve a problem. So just because a client is, let's say, eating ice cream and having a glass of wine at night, it's like, oh, it seems like such an easy thing to take away. The reality is that it's serving a purpose for them, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes it's helping to cope with shame, guilt, pain, fear, loss, whatever the thing might be. Humans in particular use food as a coping mechanism. So when you start looking through that lens of what is this solving for someone, and how can I then help them solve it differently or better with a better long-term solution, and utilize food more to like nourish and support the body, you can help people change much more effectively. So over time, I'd say we steered away from intense physiological intervention, though there's a time and a place for that, and we talk about that stuff too, and focused more on how do you help people actually make the changes they're looking to make. Because in our experience, most certifications historically focused on just the nutrition physiology, nutrition science, human physiology, which is important and fantastic. But if you don't know how to communicate to people and you don't know how to help facilitate change, all that information in the world isn't going to get you super far. So we provide both, more so than ever. We have nutrition science, human physiology, change psychology, behavior change, skill building. We kind of give you the science and then the art of coaching and how to put that all together. So I'd say that that's been more of the evolution, is adding more and more, keeping the fundamental nutrition science pieces and adding more of the coaching skills to actually get people to change. Because as the research shows over and over and over again, creating behavior change people can sustain is very difficult. So helping you develop the skills to do that most effectively is what will be the best bet for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I did notice that with your certification, it's, there's a lot of psychology and behavior and to create behavior modifications, you have to sort of dive into that. What would you say some of I know everyone's obviously a little bit different in their past and why they eat a certain way, but what would you say some of the biggest levers are that people could do to help, change that habit that they've been doing for 20, 30 years? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Serving, yeah.
Well, I think I actually would take it back to the statement I said before. Like if you start looking, this was the biggest change for me as a coach. And actually, Dr. Krista Scott Dixon, who I know you've had on your show, taught this to me when I first came to PN, 11 plus years ago, that every behavior is an attempt to solve a problem. And it just, as a coach, was like, blew my mind, because you would get frustrated. Like, oh, why? Because before I would think of things as like self-sabotage, right? A client's doing this thing and it's impeding their ability to make progress towards their goal. And it would just frustrate me and it would frustrate them. But once I had that new frame and that new lens, okay, this is attempting to solve something for them. This is serving a purpose for them currently. Maybe not well, certainly not well in the long term, but it's serving an immediate need. And if we could figure out what that was, even if we didn't know exactly, right? A client's not going, oh, I'm having ice cream because it's making me feel better about X, Y, and Z thing. It's not necessarily a logical, conscious choice. So we don't necessarily even need to know the exact problem it's solving. We just need to recognize it's solving a problem. Okay. And then how can we help solve that differently? Right? What is this giving you? Oh, it's making me feel relaxed at night, or, whatever the thing might be. Okay. What's another way we could do that? And we talk through options. And so to me, that is, as a coach, fundamentally the biggest thing you can do. It was the biggest thing I saw in my own coaching practice. And it's the biggest thing I've seen in all my years, like going out and doing workshops and presentations and having people go through case studies. It's the biggest light bulb moment I see for people when we go through stuff like this. Like, oh my God, I have all these clients. And it never, it never occurred to me that this was serving them well in some way, even if it's a very short-term benefit. It just fundamentally alters how you look at client behavior, how you look at the client in particular. And then you can now go about solving it much more effectively. So to me, as the coach, that's the biggest intervention you can make, or the biggest change you can make in your practice. Because for clients, there's going to be infinite reasons why they do the things they do, whether they're aware of them or not. And the second thing I would talk about is a frame we often use is to look at things through what we call a deep health lens, right? To help clients look at behaviors through a broader lens than how is this going to impact my physical health, right? In our experience, too often the fitness industry has pushed people to focus almost solely on physical health. That's been changing over the past couple of years. There's been a lot more talk about mental and emotional health, right? Professional athletes taking breaks for their mental and emotional health. I mean, Olympic athletes, I feel like the narrative has finally shifted there a little bit, which is fantastic because too often historically, people have focused on, okay, I'm going to do this thing, right? Whatever it is, eat keto, go vegan. I watched a documentary. I'm going to try this thing. It's going to help me lose weight and reach my goal. Okay, great. But how is that going to impact your social and relational health, right? How is that going to impact your mental and emotional health? If you suddenly start, going keto and everyone else in your family is Italian and loves carbs, is that going to create conflict? And it might not, right? But we have to ask the questions. So look at things through a broader lens. And we use a deep health framework where we focus on 6 aspects or dimensions of health. So like physical, mental, which would be like cognitive, emotional, existential or spiritual, environmental, and social. And you ask these kind of questions. Okay, if we try this thing, how do you think that that'll impact? I'm very confident as a coach, that's going to help move you towards your physical health goal. How is it going to impact your overall deep health? How is it going to impact these other aspects or dimensions of your health or your life? And it suddenly changes their perspective on, well, I really wanted to try this thing, but it might cause a conflict with my partner, with my kids, might be really difficult to pull off logistically in this way. Suddenly you change, you broaden that perspective, you zoom out a little bit, and you see how it's going to impact you in multiple areas. Because too often what we see historically is people follow that program for a short period of time because they can white knuckle their way through it, make progress towards their physical health goal, but then it sucked and it caused all kinds of problems in other aspects of their life. So they stop doing it. And then what happens, right? They revert back to where they were. So they make progress, they come back. They make progress, they come back because they weren't looking at it through that broader lens of how is this going to impact me elsewhere. So if you now look at things through that lens and you can make decisions that maybe will take a little longer to move you towards your physical health goal, but that will actually improve your overall health and well-being, what we call deep health, that'll be much more sustained, right? Because it's actually improving your overall well-being in other aspects of your health and life. And so that's going to be progress that stays with you as opposed to rapid progress, revert back, rapid progress, revert back. Right. So I'm not even sure if I answered your question, but I think those are 2 fundamental things that can really help people make sustainable progress, regardless of what the thing is they're trying to change.
Yeah, no, that's great. And like you mentioned, like most people do go on that like yo-yo dieting and come on something and then off it. And I always say like just as far as like working out, let's just use that as an example. Like people go gung ho, they're in it for they're 5-6 days a week, and then they burn out after a month. And
Right, because they went from 0 to 11, right?
Right.
Went past 10 all the way to 11.
Yeah. Instead of, okay, let's just work out twice a week.
Right.
And do that.
We go from a 0 to a 4, and then maybe over time go from a 4 to a 6, right? And then maybe we settle in right at that 6 or 7. And that's, if you want to be an elite athlete, yeah, you've got to have that dial cranked up to a 10. If you just want to like be fit and healthy and play with your kids or grandkids or go on a hike or what have you, it doesn't need to be 6 days a week, right? And I think that's often the misconception of what's needed to reach a goal and sustain a goal. Those two things aren't often aligned. So yeah, and then doing it in a way that you can sustain over the long term. So yeah, so we love that dial method rather than, it's usually an on-off switch, right? I'm either not doing anything or I'm trying to crank it up to 6 times a week to make up for not having done anything for a while. And then invariably, like you said, you burn out. How can we keep that dial at least turned up to, a 2 or a 3? So we're always doing something. And then ultimately, like we can turn it up when appropriate. Sometimes it's okay to crank it up to a 10. You're training for something. You've got a honeymoon coming up or your wedding, right? There are valid reasons to be more aggressive. But on the whole, where can we settle that dial that fits your lifestyle, fits your circumstances, and then fits your needs?
And speaking of athletes, I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, it talks about how you worked with Sloan Stephens. I'm a big fan of Sloan Stephens, U.S. Open tennis champion. What did you learn from working with her?
She might not love this, but she knows this though. She was the pickiest eater I've ever worked with in my entire career.
Really?
Which made it actually was incredibly rewarding in the end, because it forced me to have to think harder and differently and outside the box in ways I hadn't in a while. And we did all kinds of stuff. Like we flew in a chef and did taste testings and what are we going to find that she likes, and we can pair together. But it actually ended up being like super helpful for me as a coach, because it's easy to get into like, I don't want to say a rut, but maybe a routine of like, hey, this is what we do. This is how that'll help you. Particularly with athletes, it's easy to kind of fall into that trap, I think, a little bit, because they're more apt to just do a thing. Like they're used to getting coaching. Hey, tell me what to do, and I just kind of do it. So athletes are more in that mold in general. Sloan was not in that case. So she was great. I mean, once we found combinations that she liked, we actually ended up creating like a matrix chart for her, because obviously the chef wasn't with her 24/7. We would fly in the chef for like Grand Slam tournaments and things like that. But on her own, with her in combination with her mom, who was her manager, and her other support staff, we found like, okay, we created like a matrix of proteins, carbs, like veggies and fats that she liked and that she enjoyed. She could pair all of them together, and it worked out okay. And it took work to figure out what fit her preferences and what didn't.
Was she, just sorry to interrupt, was she, when you say picky, you mean like she would only eat certain things, or certain like was she like, she wasn't vegan or vegetarian or anything like that?
No, she wasn't. No. So if she had a lot of food restrictions on top of it, I mean, she had some, because she had some intolerances and things of that nature. But really it was like, in her mind, no, that food cannot go with this food. Like that I don't, like the
pairing of foods.
Which that's okay. But it certainly just created new challenges of like, okay, what can we do to still meet her protein needs and her carb needs and make it into a meal that was still nutritious and nourishing her, supporting her training, her recovery, right, and things of that nature. So it just took work, and that's okay. And then, ultimately we got into a good rhythm where we had this matrix, and her mom would really help, and because she was very young at the time. She was early 20s, very early 20s.
Oh, what years did you work with her? Was it?
I mean, the year she won the U.S. Open, so was that 2018?
Yeah. 2017. Yeah.
Yep. So I think we started in 2016 and then 2017. So yeah, I mean, that was really, really what I learned more with her was, okay, it just forced me to get out of my comfort zone as a coach. Like, yeah, here are normal meal combinations that most
Right.
clients or athletes are on board with, that she was not. And we just had to figure out new processes, new combinations, do the taste testing. It was great for me because I got to go to the taste testing too. And the chef was awesome, right? I'm trying all this great food. I'm like, man, I need all of this. But ultimately,
someone like that, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Someone like that, well, she can have to consume quite a bit. Like, I mean, she,
it's interesting. You say that. I mean, yes, because of her activity level. But at the time, she was coming off an injury and had gained some body weight she didn't want to have. So we were trying to thread the needle of like helping her reach a body composition that she was happy with, that would help her performance for endurance purposes, speed, agility purposes. But we didn't want to lose too quickly, an increased risk of like injury, especially when she was coming off a significant injury. So we're trying to help with her recovery, but still slowly bring like body weight, body comp down and improve in that area. So it was a little bit of trying to thread the needle there, which I feel like we were able to do quite well. Obviously, she was able to win the U.S. Open. But yeah, I mean, she ate. What was interesting is when we first put together her plan, like we worked together with her and the chef and her team, and she saw what she was going to be like, what the matrix was and how it was going to work out. She's like, oh my God, this is so much food, Brian. I don't think I can eat this much. She felt, because I think oftentimes people who don't know a ton about nutrition equate volume of food with amount of calories. And we had to talk, I actually showed her through like, okay, yes, it's more food than you're used to, but it's actually fewer calories than you were eating, right? Because before she was having, fried meats, drank a lot of like pineapple juice, other juices, which we kept some of that in there just for like her preferences, and she really enjoyed it. So you got to find that happy medium.
Right.
But we reduced a lot of that stuff. So the actual volume of food, especially because we added more vegetables, the volume of food went up. My total calories came down. So that was a little push and pull between the two of us. Okay, like we just treated it as an experiment because she was skeptical. I'm like, let's just try it for 2 weeks. See what happens. If it feels like it's too much food or we're not making any progress towards your goal, I will happily change it and we can try something else. So she tried it. Took a little adjusting. But then after 2 weeks, she had made some progress, like physically what we were looking for. And she was getting used to the amount. And she was like, okay, I'll keep trying it. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And then she was actually got more consistent, of course, as she saw results occurring. So, but I think that was a key framing was, let's just treat it as an experiment. We'll try it for 2 weeks, Sloan, and we can always pull it down. But I'm reluctant to go too low. Coming off there, you're still recovering from the injury, right? Like I want to make sure that continues to heal as you're able to ramp up your activity, right? So we kind of talked through like the pros and cons of eating less and the risks that could entail. So that's why she was willing to try it for 2 weeks.
Yeah. And like you talk about like self-experimentation a little bit, right? Like I always say should be your best patient, right? You nowadays there's all this nutritional dogma that goes on about what to eat and when to eat, but like I'm always trying things, not all the time because you want to stay somewhat consistent, but like, I've done periods of time where I've done more fasting and then now I'm not fasting as much and I'm trying to find times, when like certain meals like fit like my workouts and things like that. Like how important is self-experimentation?
I mean, I would say depending on the individual, but in general, like pretty important. You got to find what works for you, right? Because too often, like I said before, we teach being like a nutritional agnostic as a coach, which means I'm not married to any one approach. There are multiple different ways for people to make really good progress and be healthy and eat well. And the key is, like you said, finding the approach that you can do most consistently, right? So with that said, though, oftentimes that requires self-experimentation to figure that out. And oftentimes a client will come to us and be like, okay, I really want to try this thing. And I'm like, inside, I'm like, okay, I'm a little skeptical of that being a thing. But on the outside, I'm like, okay, well, I'll do some exploratory questions. What interests you about it? And if they're really gung-ho, it's like, okay, hey, let's try this for a couple of weeks and see how you respond. And we have like a questionnaire, like basically, it essentially asks, how's that working for you through a series of questions.
Okay.
It's called like our diet satisfaction assessment, or, has some more formal name, but fundamentally it's quantifying how's that working for you in different aspects of your health and your life. And then we'll go through that. And then oftentimes they're like, yeah, this works. It was working great here, but man, it's been difficult with this and this or that. Or sometimes, to my surprise, like, this has been awesome. I love it. Right. We actually just had a family reunion this weekend with my mom's family, and I'm talking to an uncle I haven't seen in a while who's made some great changes, and which I never bring up, but if people want to talk to me about it, they know what I do. So he's telling me all about it. Like, he's been eating keto for like the past year and he loves it. He thrives on it. Right. But like a lot of people who have tried a new thing and found it successful, I said, I don't understand why everyone doesn't eat this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, like N equals 1, I didn't explain it quite like this, but in my mind, N equals 1 doesn't apply to everybody, right? It's working great for you. But when we look at the bigger picture, you see people who feel that way and do really well on total opposite approach, right? Like a whole food plant-based,
mm-hmm.
or Mediterranean, or paleo, or you name it, you can find supporters of an approach.
Yes, very true.
Which tells us that there are many ways to be successful, right? There's not one universal solution. And so how can we help people find the approach that fits their current circumstances, preferences, and needs, which requires some level of self-experimentation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've not this interview will come out before, but I'm going to have like a carnivore on, and then I have individual sort of from the other sphere where, believes that carbs can play a positive role in your health. And we're going to talk it out. And, the thing is, we'll never come to a conclusion really, because, they each believe one way or the other. But like you said, everyone's got to sort of figure out like what works for them. What's their journey all about? It's interesting. I'm just looking at some of your posts, and this one was about sort of these different ways of eating: low fat, Mediterranean, keto, paleo, plant based. But
right.
stick to the fundamentals, right? Like
all have, yeah, that's a great. They all have fundamental underpinnings, right? Like I know exactly what you're looking at.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite images. Because the idea is, right, they have all these people who believe in these various approaches, thinking they're all so different. And there are obviously differences, right, but there are fundamental commonalities among virtually all successful approaches,
mm-hmm.
right? They all emphasize minimally processed whole foods, right? They all make sure you get an adequate amount of protein. Almost all of them recommend eating plenty of vegetables, and usually some fruits, but not always, right? There's usually some combination of either some healthy fats or quality carbohydrates in some way, shape, or form. There's one of them or both. But ultimately, it's minimally processed whole foods, getting plenty of protein, usually getting in, even carnivore. A lot of carnivore proponents are including small amounts of certain plant foods, squashes, and things of that nature.
Well, now they're starting to add them back in. You're seeing this with the
right.
carnivores.
This is what happens if you've been in the game long enough.
Yeah.
Paleo did the same thing, right? Years ago, it was really strict. And then they slowly added sweet potatoes, and they added, grass-fed dairy was okay. Because you almost always have to moderate an approach like that for it to fit a broader audience. Because the more restrictive you make it, the fewer number of people are going to be able to follow it consistently. So, I mean, that's just the reality. The more restrictive or the more complex, the greater the decrease in consistency. So that's why you see something like Mediterranean, right, which restricts very few things on the whole. It's a much more broadly accepted approach because it doesn't require as many sacrifices. Now, it's less sexy in the sense that carnivore or original paleo or fully plant-based, it is crystal clear out of the gate. I can eat this, I can't eat this,
mm-hmm.
which has its value, right? Because, okay, I can eliminate some food decisions and just do a thing. There's value in not having to think about every food decision that you make.
Right.
But there's a longer term trade-off where it's much harder to stick to long term because it's so restrictive, right? You go to a friend's birthday party, you go to a family reunion like I went to, you go to any social gathering, there's going to be lots of things there that are like not allowed for you to eat. And that's hard. That's hard for people to stick to over a long period of time because food is a part of social connection, right? We've broken bread together and shared meals throughout all of human history. Food brings joy and pleasure. So if you're cutting a lot of that stuff out, it's going to be much harder to follow. So ultimately, follow those fundamental underpinnings that they all agree on, and then find those elements, those differences that speak to you or appeal to you or are appropriate for your goals, right? If you're training to run a half marathon, you're probably better off eating some carbs, right? Something with carbohydrates. If you're a bodybuilder or a power lifter versus an ultra marathoner, like there are different physiological needs there. But ultimately, for most people, it's based on preferences. You get those fundamental pieces in place. Everything else is personal preference.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, you do see these extremes, and I think part of it too is just the age we're living in the sense that people need to, they want to maybe market themselves a certain way, and if you're blending, you're blending in, right? You're
not going to stand out.
You're not going to stand out, and if you have a stance and it's really strong on one way, then you're going to stand out and you're going to attract certain people. So I think there's a little bit of that going on as well.
100%, always. Yeah. And humans are always seeking out novelty, right? I mean, that's part of how we're wired. So it stands to reason that people are going to seek it out as a individual who wants to coach people because I want to find a new novel approach. And B, there are people who are seeking out to find a newer novel approach because what they've done historically hasn't worked, right? So seeking out novelty is a normal human feature, but it's also you got to balance that with recognizing what about this seems valid and aligns with what every other successful diet does, and what about this seems like it's really pushing the boundaries of what makes reasonable sense. So, I mean, ultimately, even the most extreme approach, like something like carnivore, for example, follows some of those fundamental underpinnings, right? Minimally processed whole foods, check. Plenty of protein, check. Those are probably the only two checks. Well, but they're including
maybe quality fats.
Yes, that's probably fair. Yep, some healthy fats, though they eliminate other healthy fats. Mm-hmm. But yes, there are definitely healthy fats discussed and included. And as we noted, it's already evolving, right? There's already a movement towards getting in more of those fundamental pieces, getting in more colorful plant-based foods, fruits,
fruit
and
honey is a big one, adding into a lot. Yeah,
right. So you're seeing it evolve already, which is exactly what we would expect. If you've been in this game a lot, I've been around long enough. This is what happens with every new novel approach that comes in. It then moderates and evolves, right, to broaden its tent, and because it's really hard to stick to highly restrictive approaches long term for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your thoughts around? I just had him on, hasn't published, although when this comes out, it'll be out. Chris Kenobi, he's a physician, ophthalmologist for years, and nutrition researcher. And there's not just him, but quite a few other people talking about, seed oils, these vegetable oils that have sort of taken on sort of this rise from, the 1900s all the way, from like Crisco all the way till today, and sort of blaming that on sort of what's going on with obesity. Any thoughts around that? Is that something that you guys have added into your trainings?
I mean, to a degree. So there was a time in my career, probably like 10 years ago, where I was more on board with that idea. Like seed oils being significantly problematic. And I still don't think they're a phenomenal food choice because of the high level of processing they have to go through, that high heat or chemical extraction that's required, can lead to some trans fat formation. But when you look at the research on the whole, it doesn't support the idea that this is like some unique poison or uniquely significant contributing factor to obesity and stuff like that. So ultimately, I don't think they're the world's greatest health foods. And if you look at, we have an infographic, and if you just Google like precision nutrition, what to eat, we label foods on a continuum rather than like good or bad. It's eat more, eat some, eat less.
Yeah, I saw that.
Most seed oils are on the eat less, but that doesn't mean eat never. There are some exceptions. But in the grand scheme of things, would I put them like high on the list of problematic foods? I mean, yes, in the sense that they're used in a lot of processed things. Right? They're cheap to make, so they're used to make potato chips and French fries, and literally you name any processed food and you look on the ingredients list and it's going to have a seed oil on it because it's a cheap source of because of the high level of processing, they have a very mild flavor, right? So they're easy to add into highly processed foods. So from that standpoint, they're not ideal. But from an individual food perspective, I wouldn't encourage large consumption, but I wouldn't be frightened of them.
Right. And and it's a cheap way of cooking, right? Like restaurants use them. 99% of restaurants are using canola oil or sunflower oil or
fat flour, corn, soybean. Soybean oil alone makes up almost 10% of calories in the U.S. diet, right? So that in and of itself is a little concerning, right? This was a food that wasn't eaten really until like the 1950s in any significant amount. So that's like, okay, but where does it occur? In highly processed foods. So if you're not eating a lot of highly processed foods, you're not going to be getting a ton of seed oils anyway. So if you have a store-bought dressing that has some seed oil, it wouldn't worry me in the least because it's about the big picture of your intake. Right. And if that is your sole source or one of your few sources, it's not a big deal. It's when you eat lots of processed foods, like the majority of the American diet is made up of, then it becomes more concerning because the amount of it, the proportion of it is so out of whack with what we should be consuming. We're not getting enough like extra virgin olive oil. We're not getting nuts and seeds, like other sources of healthy fats that we know promote health, or we're quite confident promote health. So I think that can be a concern when it displaces those types of fats, but they can certainly be included in moderate amounts in a healthy. I mean, the research is pretty consistent that they're not independently problematic when consumed in normal amounts. In super high amounts and in highly processed foods, that's a different situation.
Now, before we went on the air, you mentioned that one of your newer certifications, sleep, stress, and recovery. You said it was one of your best ones. Maybe just give us a little window into that certification and like what you learned from that.
Yeah, I mean, that was so in the 4th edition of our nutrition certification, which you've done. We have a whole like chapter on like basically sleep, stress, and recovery, and that was pretty new to that version of the certification, or at least a significant expansion from the 3rd edition. And we felt like, man, there's so much more to say here, but we can't cram it all into this one chapter or even into this nutrition certification, which is already long enough as it is. We'd really just love to like talk more about this. Like this is something that's just as important as nutrition, and it significantly impacts nutrition, right? There are feedback loops. When you're super stressed or you don't sleep enough, we know it's going to significantly alter nutritional choices. So they're interrelated and they feedback with each other. And when you eat really well, it actually improves mood and improves emotional regulation to help you manage stress better. So there's this back and forth, right? And so we were trying to come up with a way to talk about, first we were trying to limit it to just stress, but we felt like we couldn't just talk about stress and we couldn't just talk about sleep as their own certifications. They just felt too interconnected. So we kind of rolled it all together into sleep, stress management, and recovery, about the science behind them, how stress manifests. And we use that deep health framework I talked about. We call it deep stress. right? Highly creative. How you can have stress in each of those different dimensions or aspects of your life: emotional stress, social stress, mental stress, right? Like too many cognitive demands, social stress, like social rejection, or death of a loved one could be like existential stress, despair, depression. So we talk about all these different aspects of stress and the overall stress load, how sleep is like your recovery rock star, because sleep helps you improve in more dimensions of deep health than anything else. If you get really good sleep, right, or think about it, if you get really poor sleep, you're grouchy, you don't think clearly, you're tired. I mean, it's impacting multiple areas of your health and well-being. So if you get really good sleep, that can improve so many areas. You become less stressed, you can eat better, you can exercise more consistently. So we really tried to talk about the interconnectedness of them all, the science behind them all, and the skills you can build in each of those, in stress management, in emotional regulation, in sleep. Like, how do you sleep more, and how do you sleep more often, or sleep more deeply and get more sleep, right? Those are two different aspects of sleep. And then overall, like recovery, which would include nutritional interventions and training interventions. So there are small amounts of nutrition and training in there too. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, we really use that deep health framework significantly in this course, much more so than even the nutrition one, because sleep and stress so greatly impact each area of our deep health, right? The 6 aspects we talk about, and how we can leverage that, though, to improve in those areas. So yeah, I think that's basically, to me, I think it explained our own personal approach and ethos to health and well-being better than any other course we've created. And it just explains how to help people change, like the coaching aspect, better than any course we've created, because we've evolved and learned more over time. And we had, after we did the 4th edition of our nutrition certification, I think we created 8 continuing education, 9 continuing education courses. No, 12. Sorry. It was a lot. We had a whole team. We were cranking through courses. We created 12 different continuing education courses, which really helped us get better at explaining our coaching approach and giving people the tools and the skills to do those things well. And that all culminated in our sleep, stress, and recovery certification in a way I feel like it hadn't before, even though I feel like our nutrition certification is awesome. I think it's the best out there. But this took it to a whole new level in terms of, here's how to help people change. Here's how to understand coaching practices. Here's how to build skills. I feel like it just really came together in a way that was just incredibly dynamic, easy to understand, and actually fun to read.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through it right now. I mean, I agree. I can tell I'm pretty self-aware of, like, if I don't get great sleep, like how it affects other aspects of my life. I think some people, when they get bad, or they're in this rut of getting bad sleep for a long period of time, they're sometimes not aware of how much it's really affecting them,
as opposed, their new normal.
Yeah, it's their new normal. And I think that's a lot that goes to it for a lot of people. I don't know, you have kids, you have 3 kids, so I'm sure you've gone through some times of not getting sleep.
The hardest part of having kids, man.
Yeah. What's your routine like? I'm just curious. And, eating and sleeping and workout. I like to ask guests and see what their sort of routines are like.
Yeah. I mean, I have a full-time job. I have 3 kids. I have a dog trying to come in my office right now. I have 2 dogs. My wife owns her own business. So, we have a lot going on, and ultimately I try to keep it very simple. My approach has stayed very consistent through the years, with obviously always minor modifications, but for the most part, I mean, I eat 4 times a day. Basically like a early morning when I get up at like 5:30. So I have coffee and I have like a small bite to eat. Usually work out around 6:30.
And that bite to eat is just something little, like before.
It's always some dark chocolate with my coffee, man. Gotta have some dark chocolate with my coffee. And it's usually like that, and like a banana and a protein shake, or I'll do like an RX bar and a banana if I want a little bit more carbs. I'm going to be like doing a really hard workout because I just feel better when I do that. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's very, very generally very minimal.
Then you do your workout.
Yep. And then usually I'm like getting the kids ready for school, or this time of year off to summer camps, or, chauffeuring them around there. And then I come back, I have like what I would consider my breakfast, but usually around like between 9 and 10, which is usually just like a big thing of Greek yogurt, like plain Greek yogurt, various fruit, usually because I love pineapple. It's usually pineapple, like strawberries and blueberries, all mixed in there. But like today, I just chopped up an apple. That's what I had with some peanut butter toast. And then I usually have lunch around 2:00, which is usually something very simple, chicken with some potatoes and vegetables, or I'll get some like pre-made meals from the grocery store, which are actually great. There's one that's like it's got rice, brown beans, corn, chicken. It's like a fresh salsa on it. It's really good. And I usually have, no matter what I have with one of those, I'll usually have like some almonds and another piece of fruit to kind of top off my lunch. And then dinner varies the most. It's the meal that we have as a whole family. So, but it's almost always something that revolves around a protein, quality carb, some healthy fats, and some veggies. Or occasionally just some fruit. Like last night, we had breakfast burritos for dinner. I stir-fried up some peppers and onions. We had some wraps, some eggs, some black beans, a little cheese. We all had some fruit with it, and it was fantastic. So I usually keep it very simple, very balanced. Don't worry too much about trying to time this and time that. And those 4 reasonably or evenly spread out meals, usually in bed. I mean, my wife and we go to bed early, much to the chagrin of our 12-year-old daughter, who wants to now stay out later and do things. And it's like, okay, well, mom and I are in bed or asleep by 9:30, so we got to be done by 9.
Right.
So that might have to change. We'll see how that works out as she gets older here. But ultimately, we're usually upstairs, like tucking the boys in or hanging out with the boys and our daughter. But we're usually in around 8:30, like reading some books with the kids. And then we read our own books usually for a little bit, and then asleep by 9:30-ish. Usually aiming for 8 hours. Sometimes it's earlier if I'm tired. Sometimes it's 10 if I'm not. But anywhere between 9 and 10, and then awake by 5:30. That's the way it goes. And then exercise-wise, generally lift 3 days a week. This time of year, it's often 2, just because there's so much more to do outdoors. I go mountain biking with some other dads in my neighborhood. I'm running a 10K race with my wife this year, which I've done in the past. But I'm not typically a big runner, so 10K is like pushing my limits. I can mountain bike, but boy, running is like I come from a strength and conditioning background. That was my big emphasis for a long time. So yeah, really lifting generally 3 times a week. I play men's league hockey in the winter, mountain bike, run, do intervals, do some zone 2 work, just a whole smorgasbord of things, because I want to be able to be strong, fit, healthy, be active. No set particular goal. But yeah, that's kind of where that all works out.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Sounds like a pretty balanced approach. And I think as you get older, it's like you want to do a lot of things, but also not get injured.
100%.
Yeah, it's nice that you're still playing hockey. Those days for me, I never played hockey. I was basketball, and I'm like done with those days.
Basketball is surprisingly hard on the body. Like I play sometimes with some of those neighborhood dads, and like you're sore after, like significantly sore. It's much harder on the body than you would think watching the sport. And it's much harder on the body than I'd say hockey is. Yeah. At least men's league hockey, right, where there's no hitting and I'm not even wearing shoulder pads.
You're not getting checked at the boards.
Yeah, no. So yeah, no, like I love it. I still love playing hockey, but even when I mountain bike, some of the guys I'm not a huge risk taker because they're like, hey, I got to get up and work tomorrow, right? I got to bring my kids here. And I've seen guys get pretty badly hurt. And I'm that doesn't interest me. Now they give me a hard time because I go around some of the jumps while they're hitting them. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen you wipe out in that jump and get 12 stitches and have to go to the ER for IV antibiotics because it got infected. Like that, I'll pass. right? My manliness doesn't depend on taking some mountain biking jumps.
Now, just to sum things up, this is a question I ask a lot of my guests is, what one tip would you give an individual, maybe they're in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, and they want to sort of, get back to what they were maybe 5, 10, or 15 years ago. What one tip would you give that individual?
I'd say I would try to think of things on a dial rather than an on-off switch, right? Especially if it's been down for a long time, right? More often than not, especially as we get older, if you try to flip that on or you crank that dial to 11, that's how people get hurt, because the body's not prepared for that, right? Your tissues, your ligaments, and your tendons are not prepared for that sudden massive increase in activity. So not necessarily like super ease your way into it, but instead of having that dial at 0 and cranking it to 10, crank it to a 4, right? Just start walking or start, doing some body weight work, elevated push-ups, body weight squats, right? That kind of thing. Just to kind of get things rolling, right? Because really what we're looking for are easy wins. When you can stack win upon win upon win, that's how you make consistent, steady progress. It's when you say, okay, I'm going to start doing this 5 times a week and eating better and going to sleep at 9. And you start trying to change so many things all at once. Invariably, something's going to break because you haven't created the routines and the systems to make that just a normal part of your everyday life. So something's going to break. You're going to feel shitty about it. And then that's when usually the screw it, right? I'll do this tomorrow, or suddenly that dial comes crashing back down because it got really hard. That's what's going to happen, because life always kicks you in the teeth. It always throws you a curveball. Something's going to happen. So you prepare for that by slowly but systematically increasing things, because then you can modify that much more easily when that curveball comes, right? If you're planning to exercise 3 times a week and something happens, you only got in 2 sessions that week, that doesn't feel like a failure. But if you're going for 6 and you only got in 2, that often feels like a failure, even though 2 is a hell of a lot better than the 0 you were doing before, right? And so then that helps you more consistently do it. And it's consistency that matters in the long term. And so, okay, we got it to a 4. Now I'm feeling really good. I'm able to do this consistently. I still want to do more. Okay, let's crank it up to a 6 or a 7, right? Eat a little bit better, go to sleep a little bit earlier, right? Add an additional exercise day or 2. And it doesn't have to be something huge. Too often we think, it's got to be like 60 minutes at the gym, or I got to go for a 5-mile run. Like, no, you can just do like 30 minutes. Get in what you can when you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? There are plenty of days I plan on doing my full hour-long lifting routine, but I have kids, my wife has a business, and stuff happens. It just always does, right? So it's like, okay, I can't get that in today. What can I get in? I can get in a 20-minute circuit with a bunch of different weight exercises. Great. It's better. It helps me tread water until the next time I can do my larger routine, right? So find ways to tread water when things happen or things go sideways, because they will. Be prepared for that. And then slowly up that dial until you reach a point where you're reaching your goals and it's a way you can maintain it, right? So it doesn't have to be a 10, doesn't have to be a 4. Wherever on that dial you can set it, this fits my preferences, my lifestyle, my current life circumstances, and it's helping me reach whatever my goals are. And then try to keep that, reasonably close there. If something really hard happens, see if you can turn that dial down, but keep it off of 0, right? So using that dial concept instead of an on-off switch.
Love that.
Is usually a massive game changer for people to help break that all or nothing mindset.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. Now, you're the first guest to sort of use that analogy with the dial. And I think that is so true. Because, there's some days where stuff comes up and it's like, I think the other day I was going to do a whole lifting thing. I think I had maybe 20 minutes and I literally did just like a shoulder routine and just, was it. But it was better than nothing. So
absolutely. I'm a big fan. I'll do like what I call, they're dumbbell complexes. Right. So it's just, I grab one weight. So it's like 35 or 40 pounds, but whatever weight feels appropriate. Most people start with like 15 to 25. And then I'll do like some curls, to like, I'll hold the weights on my shoulders, do some squats, overhead presses, do some like reverse lunges, bent over rows,
everything.
I'll either hop down and do push-ups on them, or I'll lay on a bench and press them up. So you're kind of hitting the whole body. And it usually takes about a full minute, because I'll do like 8 reps of everything. And then I rest a minute, and then I repeat it like 6 times.
I like that. That's cool.
You can do that whole thing in 15 minutes, right? So sometimes if all I have time for, I'm getting in conditioning, I'm actually moving some weights, I'm going through a whole body routine. Not too bad. So that's my go-to when shit happens, and it does.
Do the total body.
I just try to get in some complexes, and maybe I'll walk the dogs later in the day. But if I can't get in my full workout, at least I got in something.
Yeah. I think had 35 pounds, and I did 10 reps shoulder presses, then did 30, 10 reps, 25, 10 reps, and just went all the way down. And I was like, okay. And then did the same thing for like maybe curls. And I was like, okay, I'm done.
Right. But it's still something.
Right.
You get the mental benefit of knowing you got to work out in, you get the physiological benefit of, right, glucose is now going to be disposed better. You're going to create some new muscle tissue because of protein turnover. Like, there are actually a whole bunch of positive things that came from just that small little workout. As much as your full one? Of course not. But a shitload more than sitting there and doing nothing? Absolutely.
All right, Brian. Lots of great stuff packed in this hour. I appreciate you coming on. Where's the best place for people to find you?
I mean, I would say precisionnutrition.com, or check out any of our stuff on our social media, our Instagram, Facebook, things of that nature. I mean, me personally, I don't use social media. I know you're supposed to today. I know.
I noticed. I was like trying to, do a little research. I was like, well, and your website, I don't think, I think this website hasn't been updated in 1948.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. It still exists. But yeah, it's a nice young picture of you. I do my work for PN, and then I go home. And
I don't blame you.
With my
honestly,
kids.
I don't blame you.
So
I could do without social media. Honestly, I mean, I like it to some degree, but you can learn a lot now. You can learn great exercises on Instagram, and don't forget people's birthdays because of Facebook and things like that. But like beyond that, I don't know.
you can get lost in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thought on it. It's a tool, and it has some uses, but it's also a double-edged sword. So if you want to find out more about my work and what PN does, my work's all over PN. So if you go to precisionnutrition.com, you check us out on Facebook or Instagram, or I think we're even on TikTok. Yeah, you'll see all the stuff I've created.
Yeah, and you guys have a great blog that I referenced some things from. So I will put that in the show notes. So thanks, awesome. Brian, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.
Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.